Hello, and welcome back to the Veteran Benefits Podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Deming. We've got a special guest today. We've got Ron Carter. He is the author of The Monster Inside of Me, a book about his experiences with military sexual trauma, or MST. And he's a huge advocate, and I think we're going to have a really interesting conversation today. So, Ron, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
So for those of you who haven't read the book or haven't heard about Ron before, Ron, can you tell us a little bit about your experiences in the military and what led you to write this book?
Yeah. I'll kind of like I was a kind of a blue collar kid, uh, rural Oregon. I'm living in the town where I graduated high school now. It's gotten a lot bigger from when I was a kid, but um, pretty poor. Wasn't really looking at college. It wasn't going to work out. So best friend of mine, he'd always wanted to be in the infantry in combat arms, and so we joined delayed entry. Um, went to basic training together, advanced individual training, and airborne school all in Georgia in 1986. I think a very different military back then than it is nowadays. And I know, Rebecca, you and I are working through some of that with some of the work that you're accomplishing for me. So yeah, I went to Germany. The recruiter said, "Hey, you guys are best friends. You'll be together through the whole thing." And then wound up in Germany. It was great in basic and AIT and airborne school. We were together, and it was fun to be with my best friend through those things, and probably made it a lot easier. And then got to Germany, and first thing they did was separate us, and so that kind of sucked. I remember, being in Prague. I don't even remember the name of the town. I think he went to, they called it K-Town, which was something like Kaiserslautern or something. But
Yeah.
I was going somewhere else. I was going to go to Bamberg, but I got stuck in like a holdover day in this huge room with like 50 other soldiers, all going different. And I didn't know any of them. And Gary, my best friend, was already gone to where he was going to go. And man, that night, holding back tears so none of the other 18-year-old boys would hear me, being soft or whatever you want to call it, was pretty eye-opening. That was like your indoctrination becoming a man. You would think basic training and all that would have been that for me, but because I had Gary there, like we just befriended a lot of people. We had fun and stuff. So
And that was back, you said 87, 86, 87, right?
yeah,
So that was still there, East Germany, West Germany. I mean, for the
yep,
guys deploying to Germany now, it was a different Germany back then too, right?
yeah. So when I got to Bomberg, I went to the first of the 52nd Infantry, which is a mechanized unit. So we had tracks, we had personnel carriers, which I didn't like as an infantry guy, especially a guy who jumped out of planes. But it's all good. It was a great unit. They have a good history in war, and so we were in Bavaria, which is like southern Germany, and we were really close. I think we were 40 minutes from what was Czechoslovakia back then. So it's now the Czech Republic, but the wall was still up. The Iron Curtain was a thing. Like the USSR was still a thing. I think it was on its last breath because literally, I want to say it was a month or two after I PCSed from Germany to Fort Irwin is when the wall came down. That was the whole Mr. Gorbachev, take down this wall or that wall, whatever Reagan said, and so unfortunately, I missed that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I got there and quickly discovered, like I kind of already knew from basic and things, that I absolutely loved the field. I loved PT. I loved, I was a wrestler in high school. I played football in high school, all of those things. And so I hated the iron my uniform and polish my boots. So Garrison and I, didn't get along real well, but I did like the field. I did enjoy it. I liked all of the things. So that's kind of the start, and then not too long into Germany is when the incident happened. The not so good stuff that completely changed the trajectory of my career and kind of really who I was for, well, to this day, to be honest with you. And I'm 57 now. I was 19. I just turned 19 in March of 1987, and I got to Germany in in December of '86. Yeah.
Yeah, and the stuff you were mentioning when you said, it's a different military, I mean, other than it being a different military in a lot of different ways, we've talked a little bit about, the period of don't ask, don't tell,
Hmm.
which I believe came into effect under the Clintons, but this was even before Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which
Yep.
doesn't have an official name. I think you and I sometimes call it the witch hunt era, where I mean, if you look at the regulations at the time, if you were perceived as being inclined to be involved in homosexual activity, it was enough to have a dishonorable discharge or other than honorable discharge and separate you from the military. So there really wasn't a lot of wiggle room for victim advocacy or kind of reporting stuff going on, because any perception could, like the witch hunt era, they were looking for reasons to kick people out.
Yeah, and if you go back to that era, also just politically, gay marriage was very much against on both sides, Democrats and Republicans. Like nobody was having that. So that was certainly the attitudes of the military, and I distinctly remember even in basic training, I think somehow in one of the platoons somewhere they found a couple guys. There's always rumor. Like there was no, oh well, those guys are they have to take them away. They had to take anyone they thought might be doing anything odd or weird. As per those times, don't take that the wrong way. They took them away from the unit, like and for their safety, to be honest with you. And so all basic training is the brainwashing to get someone to charge a hill when a machine gun's shooting at you. And so when part of that is, hey, if you're gay, we're going to boot you out of the military. Pretty much the mob, the witch hunt, with all their, you're a part of that. And honestly, yeah, I was a part of that. Like, and that's not a proud thing to say, but absolutely, that's the mindset that you're taught, and they're training you to be a killer.
Yeah.
And being
So
gay wasn't considered being a killer, back then for sure.
yeah.
So yeah.
So this incident happens to you in the late 80s. And when was the first time that you talked about it publicly, or that you shared it with anyone? I mean, was there anyone that you shared it with immediately when it happened, or?
No. No. Yeah. So to answer the first question, and I detail this in my book. I hadn't used like I wanted nothing to do with the military. I hadn't used the VA. I hadn't done anything, but I was starting a business and I was dead broke and I needed some health care. So I finally went into a VA and kind of established a rapport, if you will. And I don't know. I think this was maybe my third visit for just an annual checkup, and it's a fine day, and I call this an act of God, to be honest with you. My my doctor at the time, her name's Garney Joe Carter Powell, and she just turned around. I'd got, I'm in her office at the VA clinic, and she said, "How are you, Ron?" Like she'd done several times already in previous appointments, and I went to talk and I couldn't talk. I started crying uncontrollably, and I'm more of a crier now, um, but I wasn't a crier,
Okay.
and it was wild. So what was I, 54, 50, 53, 54? I want to say 54. I'm terrible with dates and timelines and things, but yeah. So I'm 57 now. So it wasn't that long ago, and no, I hadn't said a word to a soul. Matter of fact, I just made a promise to myself uh, that I'll never say a word to anyone because it was illegal to be gay, as you know, and that's how I was framed. That's how those monsters that did what they did. They knew that. And
Mm-hmm.
the black or white promise I made to myself immediately afterwards, if anyone tries anything like that with me ever again, I'm going to die or they're going to die. Somebody's going to die. And so that's that hyper vigilant black, and that just locked in, my PTSD. To be honest with you, was like that's how I then lived my life. And it got me in a lot of trouble. It lost me a lot of relationships and a lot of careers. Yeah, I wasn't that way all the time because I wasn't raised that way. I was a pretty happy kid. Again, we weren't rich or wealthy or anything, but I was successful. I got good grades. I played sports. I was good at sports. I grew up in small towns. In my opinion, I had a pretty good life. So yeah, around 54, I finally said something to someone through what I still say was an act of God. You know, I was never going to tell anybody that.
So the incident happened when you were like 18, 19
19.
years old, 19, and then yeah, to 54. So that's a long time to carry something like that around with you.
Yeah, yeah,
And
it
then
really was.
so so you broke down in your doctor's office and you said, I have to tell you what happened, or I have to
No,
share my
she,
story, or what?
again, God bless her. Granny Joe says, "Well, I can see," and she's kind of sarcastic. She said, "I can see you're not okay." And she didn't say it sarcastically. She said it in a kind way. And she called right upstairs to. I've got an appointment with her in 2 weeks. Her name's Stacy Dodd. She's a psychiatrist. And she, she had time. She came down. She got me. I'm having a mental breakdown, and completely a surprise to me. Get up to her office. I still can't speak. I can't talk. Um, she finally, Stacy finally gets me to calm down, and really, she's just like, "Well, hey, what's going on?" And the only words I can think of were, "I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I can't fight anymore, and I'd rather die than live this way. Like I seriously just want to die. I am so tired of um, of fighting. I was tired of fighting, and that's I didn't know it. And I didn't know that that's hypervigilance. So
Yeah.
to finish that story, she has me take the two tests that I've now taken a million times about whether I'm depressed or have PTSD.
Yeah.
Um, and she says the results. She said, "Well, Ron, you're severely depressed and you have PTSD." First words out of my mouth. And again, remember, I was in 1986 is when I went in. There was no PTSD. There was no one talked about those things. And so I said, "Well, I was never in combat. I can't have PTSD."
Mm.
First words out of my mouth. Um, because sexual trauma didn't even come to my mind. I'd compartmentalized it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, a couple of times throughout my life, men are good at compartmentalizing things to just never talk about it. It's what we're taught.
Yeah.
We're taught that. And I know young girls are too. But she said, "Well, Stacy, the psychiatrist, said it can be caused by other things, Ron. So, obviously you're not, you got it. So,
You got it. So
yeah, you should think about that." And I'm like, "Okay." Took me another couple of days. She gave me her card number. Call me. I'll get you right in. If something comes to mind. She was great. And
and Ron,
yeah,
this is VA
yep,
providers. Okay.
yes, the VA clinic in Bend, Oregon. Yeah, and the VA system's not perfect, but I have nothing but good things to say about the VA clinic in Bend, Oregon, and the overall VA. Like, um,
Yeah,
not to skip.
it's a huge system, and so there's going to be good providers, and there's going to be some facilities that are better than other facilities, but I know overall they're making efforts to provide care for veterans,
Yeah,
and especially in military sexual trauma areas. But at this point, they didn't even know it was military sexual trauma, right? They knew something wasn't right, and they were trying to work
yeah,
with you to get to the bottom of it.
yeah. And so I really kind of didn't sleep for 2 days. I was dating some of the time, and I was staying with her, and it came to me, and I just had a glimmer. I'm like, well, this happened to me when I was 19. And so I went back in and through massive tears again, told Stacy, "Well, I remember this happening." She said, "Well, she said, that's probably it, Ron." and so immediately got me connected with a sexual trauma therapist out of the Portland hospital via Zoom,
Hmm.
and so I started therapy, and started a claim on my own. I'd never even done a claim. I had no idea.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and something that we've talked through in some of the other episodes I've done. There's the VA health system, which is really just focused on getting our veterans the care that they need. And then there's the claim system, which is getting compensation for things that happen in service or disabilities that you have now based on things that happened in service. And they're two separate parts of the VA, but it's important to leverage both if you qualify for them. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and to your point, it is a big system, and I really was, I'm not a dummy, but it was very overwhelming. Just how to people say they want socialized medicine, and I look at the VA as like a beta test for that, and I'm not so sure this large geographic and population country really wants that as badly as they say they do. And again, like I have nothing but gratitude for everything. Like if what happened to me on the economy or in the civilian world, I should say, I'd have nothing. I'd have nothing but PTSD. And so, thanks to you and thanks to a lot of people, I have some really what I consider to be very substantial benefits. My son's going to college
Mm-hmm.
on chapter 35. There's so much available to us, and so I just always want to express my gratitude. And to me, it's the silver lining. Like, no, I'm not happy that what happened to me happened to me. I do lament that I lived my life the way I lived it for really the majority of my life. And so if I could take that back, like I ETS the service, and my commander in Fort Irwin had gotten me a slot to, if I re-upped, I was going to go to Fort Rucker, Alabama, become a warrant officer and fly helicopters. And honestly, that's my biggest regret in my life, is that at that point in my life, I said, no, screw this. I want out of here, because all I did after the incident was get in fights, drink, get in more fights, get beat up. It's not like I'm some superhero that, always won the fight, but I certainly looked for them. I was hyper vigilant. Again, the promise I made to myself, no one's messing with me ever again. So, throw a couple drinks in anybody and they think everybody's messing with them. And so, yeah, I've definitely lived a life that I don't think the good Lord meant for me to live. Or maybe he did, maybe he knew I was strong enough to get to this side of things and become an advocate.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask you, because you've been such an advocate and such a voice for people who've gone through this. And I know I've talked to several people, shared your book, and they said, I thought I was the only one. Someone else went through something similar to what I went through. So I know what you're doing is having a huge impact. But what was the process for you going from, okay, you had this breakdown in the doctor's office and like realized that you had PTSD, to really within a few years turning around and deciding to become an advocate?
Yeah, honestly, I got pissed. I'm a fighter. Like my fight or flight's not flight. And when I finally said something to someone and I got some therapy and I shared my story with some other people that were interested, and their jaws dropped and they said, "To you? In the military? In our military?" It's like, "Yeah, in our military."
Yeah.
And that's probably the biggest insult, is all people in the military who've signed their life on the line. Safety and trust and everything that goes with that should be the ultimate priority. Like we should be able to trust not only our brothers and sisters, but our leaders, our commanders, everyone implicitly. And the fact that sexual trauma is such a epidemic, really, and I don't want to make light of COVID or anything like that, but to me, it's an epidemic. And the
Yeah.
epidemic, of course, is suicide, right? Like we're losing. Everybody's super concerned about the 22 a day killing themselves, but I'm pretty convinced that a fair amount of those are MST victims. They're not
Yeah.
survivors, right? Like I'm lucky to be a survivor, and their
Right. Yeah, we
victims.
were talking before the recording started of using, the choice of words of survivor versus victim. And I mean, I think survivor is a better word or a more palatable word, but for some people, I guess they're not. I mean, literally not survivors of it.
Right. Yeah, and one of the things I'd love to see happen is some major university that has a, I don't know, get some good funding from the federal government and study the link between sexual trauma and suicide in our military. If you want to start there, again, use it as a beta test. The military were first place to pay women and men the same. Military is the first place to really integrate black and white people and people of all color, to be honest with you. And so, why can't we lead the way in kind of researching sexual trauma and suicide? Because I think you'll find those numbers are massive and they're massively underreported, especially on
Yeah.
the male side, but on the female side as well. Yeah.
Yeah. No, definitely on both sides. I think people who aren't aware of or haven't worked in this space are surprised, like you said, that it could happen to a man or that there are men out there that have experienced military sexual trauma. But as part of your advocacy and part of your research, have you looked at the numbers or the trends on that?
Yeah, well, and again, I think even the numbers that people talk about they're not real. They're not real numbers
Yeah.
because I just look at I'm a fairly strong person, and I buried it for 35 years. I attempted suicide twice, once really seriously, suicidal ideation from, the name of my book is The Monster Inside of Me. And because I never made an association between PTSD and really wasn't even aware of PTSD and sexual trauma, I just thought it was crazy. I just thought, like, man, what in the hell is wrong with me? Why do I lose it sometimes? Or why do I feel the need to binge drink and then, get in a fight? Or like, why is there this? I didn't know if I was a sociopath. I didn't know, I knew I wasn't a psychopath because I have too much empathy. And so, but even thinking you're a sociopath, like leads you to some pretty severe depression when you feel like you're a monster, when you feel like no one can understand you or relate to you, or you can't really relate to anybody else very well either, in intimate relationships. And I mean intimate in just like really close friendships, things like that. So it's one of the things I like to, and it's not popular, but I really wish that the VA would start looking at sexual trauma as one say cohort or track for say PTSD treatment and therapies, and then combat as another. It's not like, I mean, PTSD is PTSD, but I think the causes can create different mindsets in people. And the one thing I know about MST, having been 11 Bravo infantry, was, and I have best friends that have combat PTSD from being over in the, Afghanistan and Saudi and all those places. And I don't, it's horrible. The things they've witnessed and seen and experienced, of course they have PTSD and are trying to heal themselves. But with MST, like, there was absolutely zero valor. It's just shame. You might as well have murdered me at 19. And so
And you're
having like no like, I didn't get any ribbons for it. I didn't know
yeah.
combat, no nothing, dying or potentially dying, close to dying for my country. It was just like these two monsters decided to absolutely, me and another guy, take our soul from us. It was all shame.
So you were telling me before we started filming a little bit about how well, you didn't tell me how, but you told me that you had sort of moved or transitioned from shame when you talk about this to anger and advocacy and just sharing facts. And can you talk a little bit about that process of what it was like for you to move from the shame and how you processed it and what worked for you
Yeah, well,
or
it
is
came down
working
to
for you?
came down to, and again, I don't think we have even nearly accurate numbers because, like, if we really understood the numbers, how in the heck would they ever recruit?
Right.
Unless they made some changes. Hey, join the service and get raped. So I don't think we know that, but basically it was just like knowing, I'm not one of the only ones. It's thousands and thousands and thousands, anywhere between, say, and again, really rough numbers, like 12 and 20,000 soldiers a year. They say it's about 50-50 male and female, so almost even there. And you got to understand, percentage-wise, the females do report a little more than men do, but they're also only 20% of the military, so they do get it worse. Um, I don't even know if that's a thing. Like I hate making these distinctions, but just know the numbers are terrible. And those it pissed me off. Like it really did. I'm like, are you kidding me? This is my military. This is your military. This is our military, and we're a democracy, and it's supposed to be this place where you're just can trust each other. And these kinds of numbers just really made me angry. I don't make a good victim, so I like defining myself as a survivor. That means you've got a future, right? And so, yeah, I've shirked all the shame. I don't care who knows that I was raped in the military by two superiors who were NCOs. Well, one was E4 promotable, the other one was a staff sergeant, a platoon sergeant. And so we do need to normalize having this discussion, and I don't care if it hurts recruiting, that just tells me it needs to be more professional. It needs to be buttoned up. Maybe we need a non-military HR person in every single unit. I don't know exactly what the answers are. I do know that if you get to a PTSD situation sooner than later, it's a lot more curable is probably the wrong word, but I think it
Treatable.
becomes, yeah, treatable. There you go. That's the good word. So yeah, I keep hoping that I'm going to cure myself, and I keep working really hard, but then I'll have a setback and talk to Stacy or someone, and they're like, yeah, well, it's just something you're just going to need to be continually aware of, cognizant of, and continue to use the tools that you've been taught and have become available to you. Yeah. Yeah, so the numbers are what drove me. Like it made me angry. So I'm like, I'm strong. I'm mentally strong, and am, what else are you gonna do?
Yeah.
I had to do something about it. I couldn't just sit there and be a victim. I really did not want to do that. So I think advocacy helps me heal. Writing the book helps me heal. It's cathartic, I guess, right?
Have you had people reach out to you who've read the book and
Yeah.
shared stories, or I mean, have you heard from people that it's making an impact? I know I have, but I'm wondering if they're reaching out to you directly.
Yeah, and you know, I'm a big ball baby now. It brings me to tears. I'm so grateful that Martin Phillips, the guy who's really the writer, we spent a year and a half writing the book, but yeah, when one of us know that we've had some sort of impact on someone's life, that's the whole point. That's why we did this. And I'd love for it to be millions of people, and that's not like
Yeah.
the book's $9.99. We're not trying to make money. We're just trying to, get a message out there of like, look, not only does this happen in our military, it happens a lot, and it also, I've got friends in Europe now, British MST victims, and the Brits do even less for their veterans, and so it's not that I'm not ungrateful, but I just think that we it needs to stop. So you know, awareness, right? Like
Yeah.
gay rights, all the different rights, civil rights. Going back to the '60s, women's rights, all the rights that we've been fighting for as a society, as a world. To be honest with you, this is one that we need to we need to really address. And honestly, again, the military is the beta test because you know what? This stuff goes on all over the world. You know, children being raped, and it. I've been single most of my life because, well, to kind of describe it
The
to you.
stuff you're dealing with, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But you know, I've had the privilege of getting to know a lot of females, and I have two older sisters, and I've very few women that I've had intimate discussions with have not been molested or raped in some way or another. You know, that almost makes me cry. Like, it just breaks my heart that this goes on all over the place. The guy who's in charge of Save a Warrior, which is a great program, in front of like hundreds of people one time, someone asked him the question in a Q&A of like, hey, well, how do we stop, you know, all this stuff from going on? And basically he said, and you're gonna have to excuse my language, but this is a direct quote. He said, quit fucking your kids. So, you know, I think we can start there. It'd be a really good start. So a lot of the sexual trauma, it's not just in the military, it's everywhere, but I think I can use, you know, the military should be a safe space. You know, I know that term's not loved by everybody, but I should be able to trust people in the military. They are my brothers and sisters. We are in this together. We have signed our lives away, and I should be able to trust the people next to me and above me.
Yeah, and in the military, you're living and working with the same people, so there's no escaping. If you've got, if you have a bad boss in the civilian world, you don't have to share a shower with that person when
Yeah,
at the end of the day after you wrap up work. Or yeah, it's a different environment. And I think probably a lot of trauma, even combat PTSD, a lot of it probably stems from similar things of the breakdown of trust and leadership. I mean,
yeah,
because you expect the enemy to be the enemy, and you kind of, when you go into war, you expect that on the other side, but you don't expect that from the people that are
yeah.
on your side. And whatever that betrayal of trust is, whether it's sexual trauma or other things that are putting your life and safety in danger, I think it's
Yeah, someone being a coward on the battlefield and that cost people their lives, you know, or whatever it may be, you know, war is hell, right? One of the point is, before I forget it, you know, one of the good things that Biden administration did, and I think Senator Gillibrand, I believe she's out of New York, you know, created this environment where at least now sexual trauma is adjudicated outside of the chain of command. I don't think they've, and you probably know better than I do, Rebecca, that I don't think it's implemented all that well yet, but I have great hope that, you know, this is what happens, because I have, you know, a female friend, you know, and I'm definitely not going to use a name. She's in the book, but her name's not in the book, but she was raped twice by her first sergeant and got pregnant one of the times. Yeah.
yeah.
So, you know,
I
how's she going to go to her chain of command and say anything? You know, she
Yeah.
can't do it.
No, I think that the pendulum kind of swings in. I don't know that any administration or any, not even administration, but I don't know that anyone's gotten it right. From, it seems like it goes so far in one direction sometimes, where it's, they've got the, with it, sharp sexual harassment awareness training, or and prevention training or something, and so it gets to the point where everyone's almost making fun of it because it's,
Yeah.
you can't tell a joke anymore, and you're over. And then it goes, well, okay, then we can't have any kind of training on it because that's too woke, or that's too
Yeah.
whatever. And so, it kind of goes back and forth, and it's like, either way, but is there military justice, or are there chains of command or not chains of command, but avenues to report stuff outside your chain of command? And, and are people being held accountable, or are they just moving them from one command to another command to, okay, well,
Yeah.
we can't have this person here. And I've had clients and colleagues and friends who they move the victim or the survivor, the person who was subjected to the military sexual trauma, rather than dealing with the perpetrator. Because
Yeah.
that's, then you've got to get the military justice involved, and it's just easier to relocate one person rather than
Yep.
dealing with the actual problem.
Especially
So
back then, right? So like I hypothecate, and it's absolute conjecture, but I think I've told you, like I have no recollection of, you know, there were four people involved. I was one of them. There were two victims and two perpetrators, and I don't remember ever seeing those three other people ever again in my life. I have zero. memory of it. I'm sure that's just my brain protecting myself, but I know they put me on, I went to platoon confidence training in Bad Tulse with the special forces, and you have to be picked to go do that. It's very rigorous, and I got picked twice out of a brigade, and so it's like, okay, well, that's a little, and it's not easy. Like yeah, it kind of sucked, to be honest with you. But I got put on gate guard duty. I got sent to Vicenza, Italy to do a 60 gunning competition. They just basically sent me on all these missions where I was away from the unit.
Yeah.
So again, it's complete conjecture because I have no proof or evidence of, my chain of command knowing what happened. But, I had to help. I got the shit beat out of me. So as well as the other private, we were both privates. I guarantee you somebody knew, neither one of us were going to, well, I don't know what his thoughts are or were, but as you know, I went from no disability rating to 70% and then contacted you, and we got to 100% pretty quickly from what I've learned. So to me, that also says there's some information in the file or something. There's something that it's just all fishy.
Yeah, or they're aware, they're, what can we do to kind of sweep this under the rug or placate? Yeah, I mean, I think there is some recognition now that stuff has been done wrong for so many years, but I don't know that they're having the deep conversations. And not that we need to fix the military in this podcast, or but I think having these conversations is a good start, and and getting in with the people that are redesigning the rules of engagement or the chain of command structure or the sharp training or the way that they do the sharp training, so it's not just like a yeah, we're going to listen to the JAG or the HR person tell us what to do and then go do what we want to anyway or something.
Well, and again, I was in infantry, right? So we're grunts, we're meatheads, we're we're chimps, we're all the names that people call us, and it's deservedly so. But you kind of have to have that mentality. And so I was one of the guys making fun of that kind of stuff when I was that age. Like you've got 18, 19, 20-year-old boys who are, gonna make light of all of those things because it's to actually be sensitive to it is not macho. It's not,
Right.
I don't know how to say, and again, hopefully it's changed. I know my son's different than I am. He's 20, which is a good thing, but it's like, I just wonder how to implement that to a group of thugs like that, and I don't, they're training you to kill people. Like, how do you do that? And
Yeah.
do it in such a way where you do this sensitivity training or sexual trauma training, and yet okay, but you still need to be a killer. So, man, that's a fine dance,
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I do think there's people out there that are studying the culture and what makes successful operations, and just being a killer is not ever going to be as successful if that's not strategic. There is
Yep.
a lot of, and we haven't been doing peer-to-peer warfare. We've been doing, for the past 20, 30 years, we've been doing more in the community and the winning hearts and minds, but you have to go in there and neutralize the enemy without alienating the population. And so that is a more surgical skill in warfare than just being a meathead and pulling a trigger and aiming and shooting. And I think sometimes that gets lost in it, whether it's focused inward and just we can't expect boys will be boys, or we can't expect any kind of decorum. But in order to be effective warriors, I think they do have to have more nuanced conversations about what the objective is and be able to wield their warcraft skill in a more precise way.
But what that takes is a lot of professionalism. So you can look to special forces, you can look to SEAL teams, you can look to pararescue and these highly elite organizations within our military. Absolutely, they're great at that stuff. They're really intelligent. And then I go look at what just happened in the Middle East, and is still kind of going on, and what's happening in Ukraine and Russia, and they're just going and killing each other, and there's lots of civilians, and so I don't think we've been in that type of war, and I pray that we don't get in that type of war. I would love to see a military, like a basic infantry military, where the level of professionalism that and standards that, say, special forces are held to. Just our regular blue ribbon infantry men, and I guess now some women, are held to those same standards. And so I think that takes more pay. I think it takes better leaders. I do think that we need to screen for people who might be monsters. I don't know, but like,
No,
I mean,
I think
yeah.
you're spot on. Having a more professional military in general, in terms of how we handle adversaries or how we navigate in complex war situations, directly correlates with how the military members treat each other. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen all of the statistics, but I can only imagine that if we have a more professional approach to military across the board, it'll be easier to weed out the monsters and the rapists, and there is no place for that. It's not just well, that's what warriors do, so we have to take the good with the bad and deal
Right.
with it.
I think the modernization of just weaponry will help with that as well, because we don't need the same sheer numbers of infantrymen to go stab people. We can use bots, we can use drones, we can use unmanned tanks, we can use a lot of things, especially as AI proliferates, where we can be much more surgical should we need to be, and my goal is, like, I'd love for there to be no war. John Lennon's got it right,
Right.
Let's just,
Imagine.
let's, yeah, let love rule all the things, like that's where it's at. And talk to veterans, like, the veterans don't want to go to war, especially veterans that have been to war. And again, I haven't,
Yeah.
but I'm very anti-war. I also know there's really, really bad people in the world. And so, someone needs to protect, at the end of the day. And
Yeah.
I think modernization of our weaponry is a way we can stalemate other world powers, and then also not have actual combat be as murderous as I think it's been since the dawn of time.
Yeah. Well, Ron, I mean, we could kind of philosophize for hours about ways that
Yep.
we could fix the military, but for the people listening who've been through something similar to what you've been through and haven't said anything yet, do you have any advice on baby steps or where to start, or little mind shifts that they can make to start to move towards healing?
Well, yeah. The only thing I can tell people is talk to someone, whether that's, and maybe it's not your spouse. Maybe you're not married. Like, maybe, I don't know. I do think the VA cares. I think the VA is a good place to start. I think the vet centers around the country, of which there are thousands, as far as I know. I think there are. Those are great places. I know they're overwhelmed. There's a lot of people trying to get in there. Um, all I can tell you is, like, don't get to where you want to commit suicide and you think that that's the only solution. Um, if reading my book inspires you to seek therapy, and again, you asked the question earlier if other people have, like, I've had lots of people reach out to me, and I hope it's hundreds, if not thousands more as I age. But a guy I knew from my childhood said, you know what, that happened to me when I was a boy, and that's back when I knew him in grade school. And he said, I'm gonna go talk to a therapist about it. He didn't want to talk to anybody else, which is great, but he talked to me. He just wanted to
Yeah.
admit it and say, you know what, I need to do something about it. And that's that's just really it. Like, saying something. If you never get to where you want to be an advocate and, like, tell the world, I completely understand that. I wish you would, though, because the reason is, until people fully understand the proliferation within not just our military, but again, we talked about the civilian world. Nothing's going to be done about it, and we need we need our leadership. We need our politicians, the people we elect, to actually do something. We need Hegseth and Trump and all those people to do something about it. Like something needs to be done. And it's really easy to champion the combat PTSD people, and they deserve every bit of help they get. We need some champions on the sexual trauma side of things,
Mm-hmm.
so those people don't just go kill themselves, because I'm pretty convinced that a lot of them are doing that. I know a lot of combat people do too. And again, this is like, it's hard
It's
to
a
have this
different.
discussion. Yeah, it's hard to have this
Yeah.
discussion and not have it be combat versus MST or men versus women. And no, like, this is military wide, and it's both sexes, and everybody needs help, and everybody needs to be okay talking about it, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, we're just highlighting the male survivors of MST because it's one of the quadrants that gets the least attention, but is, on, like we've discussed, is on par with all the other types of trauma.
Yeah.
So for people who have a loved one that's, has admitted to them that they're going through this, or you suspect they're going through this, do you have any advice or tips for people and how we can support other survivors of MST?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really tough one. Interestingly, because I've thrown myself into advocacy work, like I've had civilian friends call me who know veterans who are like uh, suicidal and really struggling, and the first thing I tell them is, like, don't stop talking to them, and if you feel like they're going to endanger their life, you need to call 911, like, now, and um, have it, intercede, have an intervention, like
Mm-hmm.
keep that person alive, like. And lots of times, just listening to a veteran or anyone who's listening, truly listening, without answers, without, just like, oh man, I'm sorry that happened to you. I'm sorry, I hear you. I think listening, you have to open up. But if you're a spouse and you suspect, really the only thing you can do is, I think you still go to a vet center and you talk to someone there about it. Say, how can I, because they're going to, those are trained professionals. I don't have a master's degree in counseling or
Right.
psychology or anything like that, but I've been through some classes, and and for me as a veteran, it's just, I'm a peer, right? So, um, if I sense it in someone, I might even bring something up. I'm like, hey, are you okay? Have you gone to the VA? Have you talked to anybody? Are you good? You want to go grab a cup of coffee and just talk? Things like that. Like, because I don't think you can just go to someone and say, hey, have you been raped in the military? They're not going to talk to you. So for me, it was like I was probably on the verge of, attempting suicide again. And um, I had a mental breakdown in the VA doctor's office. It's the only thing that spurred it on. And they immediately helped me, like, immediately helped me. And it was important.
Yeah, as you're talking, I'm thinking about if we need to put warnings on this episode, or how this, you're talking about, it's such an important topic, and
Yeah.
I don't want to censor anything we're saying, but I guess we just put the labels on these topics could be triggering for some people.
Yeah.
And I just hope that the internet gods out there don't censor the word suicide, because if you're not talking
Yeah.
about it, then we don't know what to do to prevent it, and we can't help each other out.
Yeah. Well, and we're talking about rape. We're talking about
Yeah, we're talking about
really
really intense topics.
horrible stuff, right? Like, so, yeah, I've been on one other show, and that person did put a warning, and so probably should do that. And honestly, Rebecca, if we got more time, I do, like, I actually want to describe to people what happened to me, so they
Yeah,
understand the level of depravity that, and I can't say this is, it might be the worst of the worst. There probably is worse though. Like, I have no idea, but You
If
know,
you're comfortable talking about it,
yeah.
I think that's, I didn't want to ask the question because it's your story to tell, and the pieces that that you're comfortable sharing and what you're comfortable talking about is totally up to you. But yeah, if you're comfortable sharing that, then I think that might help some people listening.
And the reason why I'm comfortable sharing it is I've shared it in a book. I've shared it with probably tens, if not hundreds of people. And that's what I'm talking about, like talking about it. Like, and so that's why I actually want to almost always say what happened to me and kind of how, so people understand, like that bit of shock is, I think, useful. And so that's me. I don't mind saying it. So yeah, so I got into Germany right at Christmas time. Spent my first Christmas Eve away from my mom on desk duty all night. So I wrote her a sob letter with tears and all the things. And it was the spring of '87 when, by then I'd been in the unit a little bit, kind of around April. Still enjoyed the field, enjoyed PT. The third platoon leader, I could tell, was a red ass. Like he didn't like anybody. He definitely didn't like me. I was a decent looking young kid, and like I loved PT. I was good at it, and I don't think he liked that for some reason. Some people are broken inside. Probably some really horrible stuff had happened to him at some point in his life, and so don't know. It's all conjecture, right? So anyway, after a while, like he invited me to a barbecue at his house, and he lived off post because he was married. And I thought, well, man, this is really weird. But I was raised to be polite. I'm also a private, a PFC in the Army, and here's a platoon sergeant that's a staff sergeant asking me over, and I knew he didn't like me, and so I thought, well, this is an opportunity for him to show him that I'm a good troop, that I'm a good soldier, and get to know each other a little bit. But in my gut, it still seemed weird to me. So I show up over there, and another PFC who was also a very athletic, pretty good-looking young guy was there. And again, I know their names, but I'm not going to name them. It's not worth it to me. Um, and so we show up at their house, and there's no barbecue going on. Um, his wife's not around. It's him and another E4 promotable, so a specialist at the time. Had he made corporal yet? But anyway, E4 promotable, and he was a fire team leader in third platoon. And I was second platoon, and then the other private that was invited along with me, which I didn't really know until I got there, was in third platoon as well. So under this platoon sergeant directly. So we got there. We sit down in the living room. It all like my gut was just telling me like this is weird. And then he goes into the yeah, so we want a beer. Yeah, sure, we'll have a beer. It's legal in Germany. I'm only 19, but it's legal there to drink at that age. And we all drank from bottles. We're in the infantry, so he goes and he pours beer into glasses. And I couldn't see into the kitchen, so we're all in the other three of us are in the living room. I drank was drinking the beer, was probably, I don't know, probably three-quarters of the way through it or something. We were just small talking, and then the specialist comes across the room and starts attacking me, like punching me. So I'm like, what the fuck? Sorry, my language, but out of the blue. And so I stood up to fight, and I remember blacking out. And this was the worst thing, was the thought in my head as I'm blacking out is like I'm going to die, like, and I'm having this cognizant thought of like I'm only 19, I don't want to die, and so yeah, I thought I was going to die in that moment, and I think really that's what my mind just could never comprehend, and so I have no idea how long it was, but I woke up at some point and I was naked. I was in the bathroom of this place, and the specialist was in the background with a camera. And so when I came to that little bit there, the platoon sergeant beat me unconscious again. I was still drugged. I was still out of it, probably, concussed as well. But I really don't remember anything. I don't remember getting home. I don't remember how I got home. I don't remember going to bed. I just remember, it sounds like roofie, right? Like people get roofied and they don't even know what they've
Yeah.
been doing or anything like that. So I have no idea what it was. I had injuries all over the place, from getting beat. And so, I didn't say anything to anybody, and that was the promise I made. But it was the worst thing you could have done to a 19-year-old boy.
Yeah. I I
No,
I can't even imagine. But I think a lot of people think because you didn't go get medical attention afterwards, right?
no,
I think a lot of people think I didn't get medical attention, I didn't tell anybody, and now it's been however many years, I'll never win my VA claim. There's no way to prove that this happened. And I mean, I, I'm sure it wasn't a walk in the park for you, but there are systems in the VA for them to evaluate what they call markers and things that kind of corroborate your story, even if there's no
yeah.
police report or medical evidence of it.
Well, and I think really important was just describing to them how I'd lived my life. And you could even see in my military career, that's when I started getting Article 15s and getting in trouble. And, I got popped for smoking hash. And, like, I just did nothing but get in trouble from there. And I hadn't been in any trouble, in,
Right.
as a boy or, yeah. So, like, I utterly changed. And then, as you know, because you know my entire story, my career, just everything, it would just I'd go completely off the tracks. I had great jobs. Like I was an investment advisor at Charles Schwab. I was a North American sales manager for, in charge of tons of sales reps. But I would just lose my shit and, lose a great job. Or, I was married and imagine that I got divorced, um, so I think that being able to demonstrate through them, through my lived life, that and a diagnosis from a psychologist, like right out of the gate, like you have severe
Yeah.
depression and PTSD. They got me to 70% really quickly, and then thank God I bumped into you on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Thank goodness I did, and you quickly helped me with another help of another psychologist or psychiatrist, right? Psychiatrist. I always get the two
Yep.
mixed up. And he did a wonderful job interviewing me and a great write up. And, between your lawyer background and professionalism and knowing the VA system and how to communicate with them, along with his more in-depth interview of me than what the VA's, psychologist, psychiatrist did, it just added depth through to my story. And, you know, I got the blessed 100% total and permanent. And, I couldn't be more grateful. And it happened to me, in my opinion, pretty quickly compared to most stories I've heard. So, I think it was
Yeah.
finding the right people at the right time. Yeah.
No, I think, yeah, I mean, they do sometimes look at stuff, but it's when you go in when VA schedules you for a compensation and pension exam, that's the first time you're meeting that psychologist or psychiatrist, and you're supposed to tell your whole story to them and capture everything. And they're, sitting there, pen and paper, and kind of poking holes in your story or looking, they're just not, they don't always, sometimes they do a great job of capturing stuff, but they don't always capture all the nuance. And I don't know if it's their fault or if it's hard to open up to somebody that you've never met who's not there to treat you, but there to kind of judge you or quantify your suffering.
You
So,
know,
I think
on
sometimes working with a private psychologist to to document the full scope of the symptoms when it's not, it's not adversarial, they're kind of on your side, you have the time to open up and kind of share those details with them can be really helpful.
Yeah, well, as you know, in my case, I think it was night and day. And, then again, you speaking legalese to them was important, I believe, as well. And that's why I've referred a lot of my friends to you and always
I
will,
appreciate
because
it.
yeah, I think like the VSOs are wonderful, and I think their hearts are absolutely, and I think they know the system well, but I don't think they speak legalese. I think that in my case and in all cases, probably it's very important. Want to make a note about like I was also right in the beginning of all of this when I was interviewed by the VA psychiatrist. So I
Mm.
want to tell men especially, and women, if they're not prone to emotion, but I was very emotional. Yeah, when she was asked, like I could barely speak. I mean, I got out as much as I could, but I I encourage men to be emotional. Like, you know what? If you feel the urge to cry and you can't hold it back, don't hold it back. These people need to know that your life has been significantly altered by what happened to you.
Mm-hmm.
Significantly, not just a little bit, a lot. It's made life very, very hard, very, very challenging. And you may not think that because your reality is just your reality, right? But like you haven't
Right.
lived someone else's reality, so you have no idea. And I don't like to use the word coach, but I've told my friends like when you go into these talks, these discussions, like don't hold your emotions back. Don't get angry and yell at the person, but you know, if you're gonna cry, cry. Like don't hold that back. Like they need to know that you're in pain, you know.
Yeah.
And you don't do that by being angry at them. You do that by tears, to be honest with you. And that doesn't mean be an actor or an actress and just dwell up some tears. Like I know
But
for
if
me
you
it was
go in
it
there,
wasn't hard to cry.
yeah.
Like it was not hard for me to cry because of the emotion that talking about that incident brought up in me. I've talked about it hundreds of times now, and so I really don't like. I can still be emotional, but I don't uncontrollably cry typically about it anymore. So yeah, but
It's a
in the VA's
process.
defense, like there's a lot of stolen valor out there. There's a lot of people trying to work and game the system, and they have to be cautious. They have to be careful because
Mm-hmm.
you know you, like the benefits that you receive they're very substantial
Significant. Yeah.
in my humble opinion. And again, that's why I have gratitude. But there's people seeking them that don't deserve them. And I hate even saying that, but because who am I to judge? Like I don't know. But like if literally you're lying about something or to me that's just stolen valor. It's theft. It's
Right.
things like that.
Well, and those people make it so much more challenging for
Yeah.
people like you who have legitimate claims because then you've got to prove yourself or justify that, why didn't you seek treatment sooner? Why, well, if this really happened to you, why didn't you go get medical care?
Yeah.
And, you know,
Yeah.
I think the pendulum is swinging in the other direction now. And so I don't think they're asking those questions in a accusatory way or in a,
Yeah.
um, you know, but I imagine that a lot of people go into it expecting those questions like, well, they're not going to believe me because why would anyone believe that? First of all, the story's so incredible. It's almost unbelievable that it could happen to begin with. If you think you're the only one. And then,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
I
and
never
people
killed anyone. And
people on me go like, how did someone not find out? Like I'm not sure someone didn't find out.
yeah.
But like you
And
said,
then
they
you've
wanted to
got
sweep it
memory
under the rug.
issues
Yeah. Yeah.
between
Hmm.
the drugs, the alcohol, I mean, I guess you only had half a beer, but some of these happen with, under drinking, the concussion and then just the
The
trauma
trauma.
related, you suppress certain memories. And I think but it does make it harder to say, well, these are the dates that it happened, or this is who was there. If you can't remember the
Yeah.
details,
It was almost
it's
impossible. It took
challenging.
me a long time to eat. I was pretty detailed in that description, but that's through a lot of talking and a lot of writing and a lot of thinking about it, a lot of
Yeah.
and again, like the most infuriating part is not remembering that time after because it makes me feel like a fraud. It makes me feel like Jesus, am I lying? Like I know I'm not, but like you can get those thoughts in
Yeah.
your head. You can when you can't remember things. And The first time someone put a PTSD symptom sheet in front of me and said, well, have you experienced these? It was pretty much every one. And I'm like, yeah, well, yeah, yeah. And in memory, like uh, I have a weird memory. Like some things I just incredible at remembering, and then other like stuff like particulars relative to that, no clue.
Yeah.
I don't even remember the rest of my time in Germany, other than I got put on these, you know, weird assignments
Yeah.
that
And I
nobody
think
else
that's
did.
normal. I, because you're not the only MST survivor I've worked with. I mean, I've heard similar stories. So I'm not saying your story's cookie cutter. Every story's got its own. But I
Yes.
think that's, people have these doubt, like for you talking about your doubts about yourself, it's not, it's not to cast any shadow or any doubt on your story, but to share that, yeah, I think it's normal to have doubts about your memories or doubts about whether people are going to believe you. And at a certain point, you just have to trust that the system is there to support you, and
Yeah, and
it may
is
not
that
be
VA
easy,
doctor,
but
most importantly, is that VA doctor going to believe you? Like that's
yeah.
I can't imagine a more stressful. Like I've never been so triggered in my life. Like I was triggered. I was just out of my mind, out of my mind. Like I sold a $4.2 billion bond portfolio to a group of investors as an investment advisor. So it was a pretty
Yeah,
pressure
you're
packed
used to
meeting.
dealing with stress and
But
pressure. Yeah.
it's like that was nothing compared to this meeting with that. And she was kind of cold, to be honest with you. But again, I understand why she has the stance and the attitude that she has. It doesn't make it
Yeah.
right. I think they could be a little warmer.
Yeah.
But
They might get some more details if they were easier to talk to. I think
yeah,
some are, but yeah, some definitely aren't.
whew, mine was cold as ice.
Yeah.
It was brutal. I'm crying my eyes out. She's still just like
To turn page
monotone,
away,
man. Yeah, she's not. You okay? Are you okay to go forward? None of that. It was just like moving on. Okay.
Yeah.
Pretty brutal.
Well, Ron, do you have any final thoughts for that you want to share with people, or how they can get in touch with you and support the work that you're doing?
Yeah, well, I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on Facebook. If you need to reach out to me, please do. My name's Ronald Paul Carter. I think I go by Ron Carter on all those socials. Um, uh, Here's my book. I'll just show it real quick in case I don't know if
Yeah, and
it's in the frame.
we'll
Yeah.
drop some links in the comments or in the notes below the show so people can find you and reach out.
Maybe this talk will inspire someone to say something. Maybe reading my book will inspire someone to say something. But honestly, if you're, I don't care. Maybe you haven't told someone about your combat PTSD, or if you have PTSD from whatever it may be, or you suspect, or your life's been really challenging. The thing I want to say to everyone is, do not uh, commit suicide. Do not attempt
Mm.
to do that. Like all the sayings are out there. It's that permanent solution to a temporary problem that's the truest thing there is. And so, and I've been in those shoes. And so, please don't do that. You can call me. I'm sure you can call Rebecca if you wake. Like anyone will listen to you,
Mm-hmm.
especially another veteran if you're a veteran. But I'll listen to anybody. Like I don't want anyone to take their own life. And so, say something, please. I implore you to say something, to seek some help. You can seek professional help, and no one else will know about it. If you're in a relationship, I'm sure your wife or girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever it may be will be grateful that you're getting some help, because if you're struggling socially or in the world at all, talking about things only helps. And if you don't have some great mentors in your life that you can do that with, that's fine. Like it's good. Like there's a lot of people in this world that are trained to help you consider your life and to hopefully help you get it on a track that's going the right way, that's positive, that's toward the light, that's towards love and peace and the stuff that we all seek, happiness. So do not contemplate taking your life. That's the best message I can when someone asks me that question, and I've been asked that question a few times now, it's like, that's all I want to tell them is do not do that. Do not do
Yeah.
that.
Well, Ron, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. I could talk to you for hours more, but I really think this is going to hit with a lot of people, and it's probably going to be a slow burn as people who it resonates with start to share it with other people that it resonates with that they know.
Yeah.
Hopefully, a lot of people reaching out to you, and the work you're doing is amazing. I know it's been a hard road, but you're an inspiration, and I just want to commend you and thank you for coming on the show and taking the time with us today.
Thank you, Rebecca. I appreciate it. Yeah, the more I get these opportunities, and my goal is to start talking to maybe vet centers and groups of people and groups of veterans, and
Yeah.
that's kind of the next phase for me. The better my life gets, honestly. So it is my pleasure to come on here and share my story and talk about something that I feel is critical to address. So, yep, it's my pleasure. It's great. I'd come back anytime.
Awesome. You're
Yep.
welcome anytime, Ron.
Yep. All right, Rebecca.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.